Margaret Hilda Thatcher, Baroness Thatcher was a British stateswoman who was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1979 to 1990 and leader of the Conservative Party from 1975 to 1990. She was the longest-serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century and the first woman to have been appointed. A Soviet journalist dubbed her the Iron Lady, a nickname that became associated with her uncompromising politics and leadership style. As Prime Minister, she implemented policies that have come to be known as Thatcherism. A research chemist before becoming a barrister, Thatcher was elected Member of Parliament for Finchley in 1959. Edward Heath appointed her Secretary of State for Education and Science in his Conservative government. In 1975, Thatcher defeated Heath in the Conservative Party leadership election to become leader of the opposition and became the first woman to lead a major political party in the United Kingdom. She became Prime Minister after winning the 1979 general election. On moving into 10 Downing Street, Thatcher introduced a series of political and economic initiatives intended to reverse high unemployment and Britain's struggles in the wake of the Winter of Discontent and an ongoing recession. Her political philosophy and economic policies emphasized deregulation, particularly of the financial sector, flexible labor markets, the privatisation of state-owned companies, and reducing the power and influence of trade unions. Thatcher's popularity during her first years in office waned amid recession and increasing unemployment, until victory in the 1982 Falklands War and the recovering economy brought a resurgence of support, resulting in her decisive re-election in 1983. She survived an assassination attempt in 1984. Thatcher was re-elected for a third term in 1987. During this period her support for a community charge, referred to as the poll tax, was widely unpopular, and her views on the European community were not shared by others in her cabinet. She resigned as Prime Minister and party leader in November 1990, after Michael launched a challenge to her leadership. After retiring from the Commons in 1992, she was given a life peerage as Baroness Thatcher, which entitled her to sit in the House of Lords. In 2013 she died of a stroke in London at the age of 87. Always a controversial figure, she has nonetheless been lauded as one of the greatest, most influential and widest-known politicians in British history, even as arguments over persist. The corner of a terraced suburban street. The lower story is a corner shop, advertising as a chiropractic clinic. The building is 2 stories high, with some parts 3 stories high. Her father's grocery in Grantham. Margaret and her elder sister Muriel were raised in the bottom of 2 flats owned by their parents on North Parade. Birthplace of the Right. Honourable Margaret Thatcher, MP, first woman Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Ministry 1983 re-election. Miners strike Brighton bombing. Joint Declaration. UK Renovate Local Government Act 1985. Anglo-Irish Agreement. Westland Affair. Wapping Dispute. Big Bang. Third Ministry and term. Thatcher was born Margaret Hilda Roberts on October 13, 1925, in Grantham, Lincolnshire. Her parents were Alfred Roberts, from Northamptonshire, and Beatrice Ethel, née Stevenson, from Lincolnshire. She spent her childhood in Grantham, where her father owned 2 grocery shops. Prior to the Second World War, in 1938 the Roberts family gave sanctuary to a teenage Jewish girl who had escaped from Nazi Germany. Aged 12, Margaret and her sister Muriel saved pocket money to help pay for the teenager's journey. Alfred Roberts was an alderman and a Methodist local preacher, and brought up his daughter as a strict Wesleyan Methodist attending the Finken Street Methodist Church. He came from a liberal family but stood, as was then customary in local government, as an independent. He was mayor of Grantham in 1945–46 and lost his position as alderman in 1952 after the Labour Party won its first majority on Grantham Council in 1950. Margaret Roberts attended Hunting Tower Road Primary School and won a scholarship to Kesteven and Grantham Girls' School. Her school reports showed hard work and continual improvement. Her extracurricular activities included the piano, field hockey, poetry recitals, swimming and walking. She was head girl in 1942–43. In her upper sixth year she applied for a scholarship to study chemistry at Somerville College, Oxford, a women's college at the time, but she was initially rejected and was offered a place only after another candidate withdrew. Roberts arrived at Oxford in 1943 and graduated in 1947 with second-class honours, in the four-year Chemistry Bachelor of Science degree, specializing in X-ray crystallography under the supervision of Dorothy Hodgkin. Her dissertation was on the structure of the antibiotic gramicidin. Thatcher did not devote herself entirely to studying chemistry as she only intended to be a chemist for a short period of time. Even when working on the subject, she was already thinking towards law and politics. She was reportedly more proud of becoming the first prime minister with a science degree than the first female prime minister, and as prime minister attempted to preserve Somerville as a women's college. During her time at Oxford, she was noted for her isolated and serious attitude. At Oxford, she met a young man named Tony Bray, 1926–2014, who was impressed by her and later recalled that she was very thoughtful and a very good conversationalist. "That's probably what interested me. She was good at general subjects. Her enthusiasm for politics as a girl made him think of her as unusual." Bray met Roberts' parents and described her father as slightly austere and totally correct and her mother as very proper and motherly. At the end of the term at Oxford, Bray gradually became more distant and hoped for their relationship to fizzle out. Bray later recalled that he thought Roberts had taken the relationship more seriously than he had done. When asked about Bray in later life, Thatcher prevaricated but acknowledged the circumstances between herself and Bray. Soon after she met her future husband Dennis, and on her first meeting with him she described him as not a very attractive creature, very reserved but quite nice. Roberts became president of the Oxford University Conservative Association in 1946. She was influenced at university by political works such as Friedrich Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, 1944, which condemned economic intervention by government as a precursor to an authoritarian state. Roberts joined the local Conservative Association and attended the party conference at Llandudno, Wales in 1948. As a representative of the University Graduate Conservative Association. Meanwhile, she became a high-ranking affiliate of the Vermin Club, a group of grassroots conservatives formed in response to a derogatory comment made by an Iron Bevan. One of her Oxford friends was also a friend of the chair of the Dartford Conservative Association in Kent, who were looking for candidates. Officials of the association were so impressed by her that they asked her to apply. Even though she was not on the Conservative Party's approved list, she was selected in January 1951, age 25, and added to the approved list post-Andy. At a dinner following her formal adoption as Conservative candidate for Dartford in February 1951 she met divorced Dennis Thatcher, a successful and wealthy businessman, who drove her to her Essex train. In preparation for the election Roberts moved to Dartford, where she supported herself by working as a research chemist for J. Lyons and Company in Hammersmith, part of a team developing emulsifiers for ice cream. Shortly after her marriage, she and her husband began attending Anglican services and would later convert to Anglicanism. Early political career. In the 1950 and 1951 general elections, Roberts was the Conservative candidate for the safe Labour seat of Dartford. The local party selected her as its candidate because, though not a dynamic public speaker, Roberts was well prepared and fearless in her answers. Prospective candidate Bill Deeds recalled that once she opened her mouth, the rest of us began to look rather second-rate. She attracted media attention as the youngest and the only female candidate. She lost on both occasions to Norman Dodds, but reduced the Labour majority by 6,000, and then a further 1,000. During the campaigns, she was supported by her parents and by husband Dennis Thatcher, whom she married in December 1951. Dennis funded his wife's studies for the bar, She qualified as a barrister in 1953 and specialized in taxation. Later that same year their twins Carol and Mark were born, delivered prematurely by caesarean section. Member of Parliament, 1959 to 1970. In 1954, Thatcher was defeated when she sought selection to be the Conservative Party candidate for the Orpington by-election of January 1955. She chose not to stand as a candidate in the 1955 general election, in later years stating, "I really just felt the twins were, only two, I really felt that it was too soon. I couldn't do that." Afterwards, Thatcher began looking for a Conservative safe seat and was selected as the candidate for Finchley in April 1958, narrowly beating Ian Montagu Fraser. She was elected as MP for the seat after a hard campaign in the 1959 election. Benefiting from her fortunate result in a lottery for backbenchers to propose new legislation, Thatcher's maiden speech was, unusually, in support of her private member's bill, the Public Bodies, Admission to Meetings, Act 1960, requiring local authorities to hold their council meetings in public. The bill was successful and became law. In 1961 she went against the Conservative Party's official position by voting for the restoration of birching as a judicial corporal punishment. Thatcher's talent and drive caused her to be mentioned as a future Prime Minister in her early 20s, although she herself was more pessimistic, stating as late as 1970, "There will not be a woman Prime Minister in my lifetime. The male population is too prejudiced." In October 1961 she was promoted to the front bench as Parliamentary Under-Secretary at the Ministry of Pensions and National Insurance by Harold Macmillan. Thatcher was the youngest woman in history to receive such a post, and among the first MPs elected in 1959 to be promoted. After the Conservatives lost the 1964 election she became spokesman on housing and land, in which position she advocated her party's policy of allowing tenants to buy their council houses. She moved to the Shadow Treasury team in 1966 and, as Treasury spokesman, opposed Labour's mandatory price and income controls, arguing they would unintentionally produce effects that would distort the economy.